Imagine a setting. It's a desert wasteland where women are being used as portable incubators and men are dropping like homicidal flies. The movie is Mad Max Fury Road, which came out this past summer. It included not just an explosive blockbuster like we were all expecting, but a poignant bit of social commentary about people, pacifists, trying to escape a violent oppressor. The DAG, one of the women in this movie, says, "I thought you women were above all that," when talking about violence. Now, what this does is raises the question, is violence in film, when perpetrated by minorities, empowering, or does it just uphold these age-old hypermasculine stereotypes? And should we, as a society, not try to transcend through representation? Now, the answer I found was not yes or no, but rather how, why, when, and what. Specifically, how the film was made, when it was made, who made it, and in what ways do these stereotypes and harmful tropes affect minorities watching the film. Now, these tropes and stereotypes have changed drastically with each new generation. For example, in the 1970s, a film genre known as blaxploitation films became very popular, just not among the older generation of African Americans. While this generation wanted more peaceful, assimilated representation of characters, the newer generation loved the sexual, violent iterations that were shown on blaxploitation films. Against the backdrop of the Black Panther movement and the 1970s racial riots, the newer generation did not want compliance. What they sought was active protests, as in some forms of retribution. Similarly, with the shift to second-wave feminism in the 1980s and 1990s, we saw a shift away from femme fatales being used as violent stereotypes for women, and more often saw these violent women being seen in more sympathetic lights, such as movies like Foxfire and Thelma and Louise that came out in the 1990s. These changing social ideologies forced the cinematic paradigm to change with them. It's true that we as people now find this violence almost cathartic, as it contains equal representation of classic white male anti-heroes and represents retributions for past social wrongdoings. However, this does not mean problematic stereotypes do not still rear their ugly heads. What often stops minority violence from being socially acceptable are tropes like the black bad man or violent black man stereotypes, which reduces their black characters to just one characteristic, ultraviolence. The same stereotypes apply to women, and especially women of color, who are often hypersexualized, such as tropes like the femme fatale, the emasculating cannibal, the dragon lady, or the virgin, all of whom meet their demise by the end of the film. In these tropes, the characters are not seen as characters, but rather as violent iterations that are strongly tied to either their sexuality, their race, or their gender. Now, whether or not a character becomes problematic, however, is highly dependent on who makes the film. Unfortunately, 94% of movie executives today are white, and 100% of them are male, according to a 2015 study. What this does is create an industry that just regurgitates the same old harmful stereotypes that we see perpetuated by white men that cannot fully understand the social and political nuances and experiences of being a person of color or a woman in today's society. A term commonly thrown around is, "you can't fight fire with fire," which speaks to the nature of violence while completely ignoring and vilifying the rightfully angry narratives of oppressed groups. I understand that this phrase calls for the end of violence altogether, for peace. But peace, while nice in theory, is not progressive if it completely radicalizes and ignores the experiences of minorities. So spoiler alert, at the end of Mad Max Fury Road, the women succeed and overpower the patriarchal values. But they do so through violence. And here's the thing, they are fully fleshed out characters, and their violence is something that is completely justified. It represents something. And representation in and of itself will always be the most important thing. And when it's done right, if that representation is violent, it can be incredibly empowering, but only if it's done right. Thank you.